Welcome back to a new video. It is time to do my reading journal for January, and this will be the first month where I actually get to use this pre-printed journal that I got from the Book Sisters. This will be my first year of doing pre-printed journal. Last year I did a DIY one and I liked it quite a bit, but it was a lot of work to do all of the decorations and all the pages, given how much I read. So this is the first month I really get to play with this pre-printed journal, and I'm very excited. I think I like it quite a bit. We'll let you know as we go in. First things first, though, I have to fill in the reading tracker for the year so far. This is a little bit redundant. There's a page later on where they talk about individual January reads, so I don't really know if I need both, but I guess it's nice to have my books all in one place. The books that I read this month are Blood of the Stars by Corrine Norton, The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst, The Crane Maiden by M.H. Woodscourt, The Mystery of the Crooked Man by Tom Spencer, A Descent of Dragons by Jasmine Young, Book Boyfriends by Melissa Whitney, A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmerer, Warrior Princess Assassin, also by Bridget Kemmerer, Tempest and Tea Leaves by Rachel Morgan, The Artificer's Knot by Eric Lewis, Deals and Dream Spells by Rachel Morgan again, A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Kemmerer, and The Hunter's Apprentice by Simon Sugar. So that leaves me with 13 books for the month, a decent mix of physical and ebooks with one audiobook thrown in there, which I will talk about in a bit. Overall, it's a pretty decent mix for January. I was honestly not expecting to get this many books in, given that I started the month kind of on a slow note. Not slow because the book was bad, but because it was really, really long and it took me ages to read through, and I was absolutely convinced that the rest of the month was going to be as slow. But I ended up reading quite a lot more than I expected, and I enjoyed the books quite a lot more than I expected. I also had books that I read for the SPFBO book reading contest. I am a judge this year. That is the self-published fantasy blog-off book contest, and so I will be reading books for that contest throughout the year, interspersed with other books that I want to read, and I'll let you know how they go. Some of these books you will have seen in book review videos that I did earlier on, and I will link those down below as we get to them. But the majority of these books I read without a book review video, so this is where I will review them for you. Now, on this first page, I already messed up. I wrote one of the books in the wrong order, and then I started putting the star rating in, so I had to move things around a bit. So if you look at the star ratings, ignore them. They're not accurate for the book that they are next to, for the most part. That's just how these things go. All right, now to venture into the rest of this journal. I haven't really played with it a lot, so I don't know what's there. I went into the 5-star reads and entered A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmerer and Tempest and Tea Leaves by Rachel Morgan. I'm not sure if I really care about keeping track of my 5-star reads, but I guess it's not a problem. Skipping over a bunch of the series and TBR and Year in Pixels and challenges and things, and getting into the January pages. Now, I don't keep a weekly list, and I didn't feel like showing you all writing down the names again, so a lot of these January pages are not really relevant to me, and that is the problem with some of these pre-printed journals, is that the pages that are in here are either extremely relevant or not at all, and it feels like a bit of a waste to not use all the pages, but I just don't. So I'm not sure. One of the places where I think the pre-printed journal will excel is the fact that the book review pages are already printed for me. That saves me the trouble of having to write it all out myself and do all of the fancy decoration. I can absolutely just go in and add the cover like you see me doing here for Blood of the Stars, add a bit of decoration, and then write out my thoughts, and I like that quite a lot. So the first book I read was Blood of the Stars by Corrine Norton. As I said, this was an absolutely epic scale book. I will leave the book review I did for that in the description box below. But this book took a long time for me to read, and not because it was slow going as far as the book goes, but because it was like 700 pages long, and I was still in Christmas mode and my brain was dead, so it took a while. But the story is epic in scope and in page length, and the characters are really well thought out. I liked both of the primary point of view characters quite a lot. The world was absolutely detailed and excellent, and I think it's a great epic fantasy. I will probably be continuing in this series, though I'm not sure when, because I have the first book in physical copy and I want to get the next book in physical copy because I like to match, and I'm not sure when that will be because I have a bunch of other books on my to-buy list. But I will absolutely write this down and keep note of it for future, probably for the summer reading challenge with the Indie Fantasy Addicts that I do. The next book I read was an entirely different pace from the big giant epic fantasy. This was The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst. This is cozy fantasy at its finest. It is the follow-on to The Spell Shop, if you have read that one, and it follows Turla, who was imprisoned inside a statue for creating a sentient plant, and she then is sent to an island and reconstituted and discovers that there's only one person there, the gardener, who is taking care of a bunch of enchanted greenhouses. It's a really cute story. I don't really know what else to say. It's cute. I like the romance. I would have given it 5 stars, but I just have the hardest time mentally wrapping my head around people with pink skin or blue skin or whatever. Every time the author describes the characters, it just throws me out of the story. And it's no fault of the author, it's no fault of the book, it's just my brain. But it is the only reason why this book did not get 5 stars and instead got 4.5. I have a feeling that this year I will be reading a lot of cozy fantasy. It has become kind of my go-to, especially when there's hints of romance in there. I love the cozy vibes. I think the high stakes are great and they can be absolutely fantastic to read, but if I'm having a bad day, and let's face it, who isn't at this point, cozy fantasy is the way to go for me. The next book that I read was The Crane Maiden by M.H. Woodscourt. This is another book that I did a review for, so I will leave that in the description box below. It is an epic fantasy, high fantasy, and despite what the author claims, Christian fantasy. I know that the author insists otherwise, but it really is a Christian fantasy, and that is primarily where my problems with the book lie. I am Christian, I read Christian books, but I have a hard time with Christian fantasy. It tends to be very over-the-top allegorical, and I have a hard time with that. The characters can sometimes feel too perfect, and I want more human feeling things. So I enjoyed this book, but it was in a genre and a subgenre that I don't really enjoy all that much, so I'm not really sure where to put it. I liked it, but I didn't like it at the same time. The writing was great, the world was great. I think this author does wonderful books, but this one in particular, just because I'm not a huge fan of Christian fantasy. The next book that I read was The Mystery of the Crooked Man by Tom Spencer, not Thomas Spencer, excuse me. This is an ode to kind of your classic detective fiction stories. It's about a woman named Agatha Dorn who discovers a manuscript from a long dead mystery author and goes and helps publish it, and then discovers that it's a fake. And there are murders involved, and it was very interesting. I enjoyed this quite a bit. It's kind of half detective fiction, half cozy fiction. Cozy mystery. And the ending, the primary villain of the story, I did not see coming at all, but I think it fit really well with the story when I did get to that point, and it was fun. I liked Agatha. She was very stubborn and charismatic while also being deeply, deeply flawed. And I loved the kind of references, overt and not so overt, to Agatha Christie and Poirot and all that stuff. It's very tongue-in-cheek and entertaining. The next book I read was a short story, a prequel story to the Realmbreaker series from Jasmine Young. This is all about how Bale fell from his realm and into Skalda's, and it was very fun. I love Bale. Bale is my favorite character out of all of the characters in that series, and I will stand by him. And I loved this little snippet into his past and origins, and I think it was delightful, and I want to give him a cuddle. Yes, I know he is Bale, but oh my goodness, he needs a cuddle. By the way, if you are interested in this series, I highly recommend it. I haven't yet gotten to book 3 because it is absolutely massive and I'm intimidated, but books 1 and 2 I enjoyed thoroughly. The next book I read was a rom-com from Melissa Whitney called Book Boyfriends. This is about a social worker who writes romance in her spare time, and she wishes for her own romantic interest to appear in her life, and suddenly the 3 main heroes of her 3 romance novels have appeared out of the blue. And, oh, by the way, there's also someone else who might be in the running. This was a fun, cheeky romance. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I also did a book review video for this one. If you are interested, I will link it in the description box below, and you can see my full thoughts on this book. But if you need something lighthearted and fun with a main character who has a disability and just kind of goes about living her life, then this is absolutely one for you. Very entertaining. The next book that I read was A Heart So Fierce and Broken. This is the only audiobook that I have done, and I have been working on this audiobook for a year now. And this is why you won't see me doing very many audiobooks throughout the year. It takes me absolutely ages to listen to them. So for this series by Bridget Kemmerer, I ended up just buying them in paperback because I wanted to read book 3, but I also didn't want to take another year to do it because book 1 took a year and book 2 took a year, and I got impatient. Don't get me wrong, I adore audiobooks. I think they're fantastic. I am just the slowest listener ever because I only listen to them under very specific circumstances, and I listen at normal speed. Yes, I am weird. Anyways, I think this was an excellent book, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't think it was a 5-star read, but I got so excited at finishing the audiobook that I gave it 5 stars, and I can't bring myself to change it. Anyways, moving on. The next book that I got was Warrior Princess Assassin, also by Bridget Kemmerer. This is her adult fantasy fiction piece, and I think it was very nicely done. I like her books quite a bit because they tend to involve a lot more in the way of politics and human interaction. Ooh, that sounds like I'm not human. Yes, anyways, human interaction from this poor observing Vulcan. Anyways, there's a lot of depth to the world and to the magic and to the characters, and I think that's really nice. I will say that I didn't care that much about the spice. I loved the romance, but the spice was just kind of whatever for me, unsurprisingly, so that is why it did not get 5 stars. But I will absolutely read the next one when it comes out. I don't remember if this is a duology or a trilogy. Whatever it is, when it comes out, I will read it. The next book was my proper 5-star read of the month. This is Tempest and Tea Leaves by Rachel Morgan. This is a cozy Bridgerton-esque fantasy about fae who have their debut season when their magic manifests, and then they go about trying to get their match, and I think it's delightful. I did a full book review on this, and I will link that in the description box below so you can find that. But honestly, it was charming, and I loved the world building, and I loved the details and the characters, and the writing was so delightful. So I immediately went out and then bought the whole series in paperback to sit on my shelf, and now I'm eagerly awaiting the next books whenever they get released, hopefully this year. Yeah, if you love Bridgerton or historical romance or anything like that, absolutely read this series. Very delightful, very cozy too, which, as we know, is one of my favorites. The next book that I read was the first full book that I read for the SPFBO reading contest. This is The Artificer's Knot by Eric Lewis. There is a book review for that one. I believe it will have been released on Tuesday before this video comes out. I do things out of order, so I don't always keep my schedule straight, but I will link that in the description box below as well. I really wanted to like this book. The writing is superb, the characters pop off the page, but the plot was so not entertaining to me. It was continuous escalation of drama without any kind of thinking about it, and I got bored, frankly, because it was just almost predictable. Anyways, moving on to the next book I read, which was Deals and Dream Spells by Rachel Morgan. This is the second book in the Charmed Leaf legacy follow-on to Tempest and Tea Leaves, another cozy book that I enjoyed quite a bit, and a palate cleanser after The Artificer's Knot, which I really did want to enjoy. I really did. It was so well written. The plot, I couldn't do it. Anyways, sometimes it just happens like that. The next book that I read was the paperback of A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Kemmerer. This was the third book in the Cursebreaker series, and I got it in paperback, as I said earlier, because I just couldn't bear to wait another year while I listened to the audiobook. And I think it was a great conclusion to the series. I enjoyed it quite a lot. It was weird seeing some of these characters' names spelled out for the first time. I was not expecting them to be spelled thusly, but that's the way it goes when you go from audiobook to physical book. Oh well. I really enjoyed this series. I think it was fun, and I will absolutely read it again, which is good because it's now on my shelf. Yay! I will say that the ending of this book felt a little abrupt, and I was a little bummed because I wanted a bit more, kind of a what happens next sort of a thing, but I do know that there is a follow-on series that happens some years after the first one, so exciting, very, very exciting, and we'll see what happens. The last book that I read this month was The Hunter's Apprentice by Simon Sugar. This was another SPFBO read, and I'm not really sure what to think of this one. The book itself was very well written, and I think the topic, which is kind of childhood and war and whatnot, is very well done, very well explored, but the narration was about a child aged 4 to 10 throughout the years of this book, or the span of this book, and the narration was more like an adult, and it was kind of an odd conglomeration of adult and child, and I didn't really love that so much, so it was entertaining, but I'm not sure I would read it again. Going back now to fill in some of these challenge pages that the pre-printed journal so helpfully supplies. I don't really care all that much about doing challenges. I think it's interesting to see if there are themes to what I'm reading throughout the year, but it's never been something that appeals vastly to me. And the one challenge that I did want, which was a book bracket, they don't have. So I think this journal is exquisitely well done and well crafted, and it will probably appeal to most of my needs, but I'm also a little particular about the pages that I want and use, so we'll see how this goes. I'm going to try it for 6 months, and then if it still continues to kind of irk me a bit, I will create a new reading journal, and I'll do it myself and populate it with all of the information. The one thing I do love is the fact that it has the pre-printed book review pages. I think that's really nice because I read so many books, and doing the decorations for so many books is a bit overwhelming. I'm just not sure if I need all the other stuff. I do like coloring things in though, even if I do it very badly. I am curious how you keep your reading journal, if you do a DIY one, or if you have a pre-printed journal that you love and will use forever and ever, well, until you finish the number of books it allows. I always am curious what people do and use. Anyways, that's all for this month. Let's go through and look at the books that I've read, starting from the back, I guess. I think it's nice. It looks very tidy. I love the little pop of decoration in there. And I really enjoyed the uniform book review spreads. I think it's really cool. So anyways, that's all I've got for this month. And happy reading. I shall see you next time. Bye.